issue of engagement of NSmen, you talked a little bit about the commanders, but I understand that NOS and SPS of Defence so you've given the task to engage NSmen. So what can we expect?
Let me just talk about their roles. On a larger scale, of course, Minister of State Lawrence Wong and Senior Parliamentary Secretary Muhammad Maliki assist me as political office holders. And this is a big ministry, as you can imagine, and they sit in important meetings in MINDEF HQ where we review policies, papers, make decisions on procurement, give feedback. So across the board, they assist me. That's their political role. There are specific roles that I've assigned them for both of them to engage more NS men. They both sit on a court. They both sit on help manage SAFRA, as well as from time to time we'll have to engage both NS men and commanders in their own capacities, in their in functions and in other activities. So broadly, this is how I would sketch their responsibilities. But if you have any specific questions to follow up, I'll be happy to answer.
Minister, a question on Singapore-Malaysia relationships. Recently, they made allegations that we have invaded their airspace. I think our High Commissioner has tried to explain it. How do you think this episode will have an impact on our bilateral relationships?
Well, as our High Commissioner has replied, the number of alleged violations jumped dramatically after the ICJ ruling, as their own papers noted that there was not a reply. That's the context. We take it very seriously. We take every allegation of violation of airspace in any country seriously. We must. And because the RSAF adheres very strictly to international air rules and regulations. So we have investigated and we found no incident where we have infringed on anybody's airspace without permission or have gone against traffic rules, international traffic rules and regulations, air traffic. And we've conveyed this to the Malaysian side in 2010, and we've offered to exchange the information we have with theirs to see why they have to help resolve this issue about alleged violations, and they have to get back to us. They still have not gotten back to us. We will continue to engage Malaysia to maintain and improve our defence relations. We continue our military-to-military interactions. At various fora, I meet with political office holders, and we want to have good bilateral relations, defence relations, and we'll continue our efforts. I would say that we want to respond to this in a measured way, but to state the facts and help clarify the situation. For Singapore, a strong SAF allows us to act in a measured way.
So maybe, but broadly speaking, I think Malaysia and Singapore bilateral ties have and they are warming up beyond the rhetoric. So I'm just wondering, in what areas do you think, how will both sides be seen to maybe strengthen this relationship, and specifically maybe, do you hold out any hope of any possibility of maybe easing the controls of maybe the airspace, for example, that has always been controlled
on the Malaysian side?
Yeah, on both sides.
On both sides?
Because currently our airspace, the control of our airspace is governed by the FIR, the Flight Information Region. So I'm just wondering, maybe as our ties are warming up, I'm just wondering where maybe it will ease.
I'm not aware of any restrictions on our sides. I mean, our FIR are basically we contribute in that way, but I'm not aware that we restrict our But there are international rules and regulations, and that's not the point. So the point of your question, I think I've answered. As to how we can improve ties, I wouldn't quite phrase it in your question as if improving of ties relate only to airspace. I think the larger picture is what is our defence relation, how do we want to continue, and as I said, I think our relations are warm on the defence track. We will continue military to military exchanges as we have our services meet regularly and exercise regularly, both in the 3 services. And we have the FPDA. The FPDA is the 40th anniversary this year. In November we will commemorate that. We continue to meet not only from the military to military, but at the MINDEF level and ministers level, continue to meet regularly. So I would characterize what we've been doing as constructive, and what we want to do is continue along that course. As for this particular incident, which is a specific incident, I think our High Commissioner has stated our position. I think that speaks for itself.
About one more question. I'd like to invite the media who has not asked the question. Maybe you'd like to pose Minister.
Sheena from Pioneer. You mentioned that we are going to Sheena from Pioneer. You mentioned that we're going to continue deploying troops to Afghanistan, and in light of US withdrawing their troops from there, do you see it posing a risk to our servicemen? And if it does, how can we mitigate those risks?
Our deployments in Afghanistan have always come with risk to our soldiers, as it does to all participants who are contributing to international security efforts. As to whether risk will increase with the withdrawal, that is something that we have to monitor. But our commanders are quite attuned to this, and they have to take the necessary precautions if the risk levels rises. But I would say that we will continue our commitment in line with what we've done before and adjust accordingly to the situation.
Minister, maybe if you can talk a little bit more about NS, for example. I mean, even as we continue our hardware capabilities improve NS, we continue equipping our servicemen with the best technological gadgets. I'm just wondering, critics have been quick to say that our new generation of enlistees, they are softies, laptop or iPad toting softies who are bruised easily. What do you make of such criticisms, and how fair do you think is this characterization of our new generation of soldiers?
Well, critics are critics, but what we will look at is not so much as specific instances, but we have objective information about how each battalion does. So, depending on your unit, you have your advanced tactical assessments, your specific outcomes in terms of how your frigates perform, your F-15, F-16s, your Leopard tanks, your artillery, and that's why your question really is asking, how do we know? How do we know that we have an effective fighting force? That's the bottom line. Whatever the reason, whatever the criticism. And you can only know when the real test comes, when there's a real critical need, which obviously we prepare for, but we prepare so that it never comes. But in absence of that, the next best is large-scale exercises that we conduct regularly, where you actually move men and machines, and you have as close to realistic training as you can, and then you see whether you reach your objective, whether the objectives are destroyed, how your men, and so it's a very different outcome. And the realism is taken seriously. So I talk about the advanced combat management systems. I mean, during our time in exercises, what some of you remember is sometimes we go bang, 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 bang. I don't know how you just charge a hill and you go bang, 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 or you shoot, blanks. But if you look at our what we do in terms of battlefield instrumentation now, we put sensors on our tanks, on our infantrymen, on our armored carrier vehicles, so that if they hit, they know. And after the exercise, there's a playback to know who are actually hit because they're using lasers. And we invest considerable amounts to make sure that it's completely realistic. You know, it's paintball, but it's like paintball, but in far away distances, so that you can actually capture, and that's how modern militaries are doing it. So that's the final test, and that's what we continue to benchmark. The second area that we know that we are efficient is, in terms of moving men and machines, really is in our HADR performances. So, and it may be just a factor of navigation, right? You know, you deploy in a place, can you get from point A to point B? But in Afghanistan, for example, in Oruzgan, when they were faced with incoming rockets, artillery and mortar, we sent our weapons locating radar. Now that's not simulated. If your weapons locating radar don't work, if you don't give advance warning, they've suffered real injuries, real casualties. So it worked, and we gave 24/7 coverage, protection. Now, the fact that we've also sent in vehicles that our own version of MRAPs, multi-resistant armored protected vehicles, that's not simulated. There were NS men who also wanted to serve in the Gulf of Aden. We regularized them. And I visited some of the ships there when they were guarding the Al Basra oil terminal near Iraq. And those who went, this was in the northern Arabian Straits. So I would say that they're objective benchmarks. We benchmark against the best militaries. I'm not also completely unhappy when we Singaporeans feel that we ought to be tougher. I think it's good. I think it's good that we will continue to try to be physically strong. I think it's good not only for the SAF but just individual health. I've always felt that when nations get rich, one of the problems is that you have a lot of food around, and I think so far I think we want to maintain that we continue to be fit. And that's why I thought it was good to just run with the men. I told them I'm nearly 3 times their age, but thankfully the legs can still run. Don't know how long you can do this, but as long as you can keep doing it, you just wake up every day and you just do some exercises and you keep fit. I think that's something that we can all do. So I'm not completely unhappy when Singaporeans say we ought to be fitter. I agree, all of us.
Okay, sorry, I think Mr. is scheduled to follow. We've come to the close of the interview.
One last question.
So maybe on a personal note, I'm just wondering, why do you think men and women in Singapore should continue to place their trust in the SAF, and how do you and your team, how do you all both intend to ensure that the SAF does not fail?
The SAF comprises NS men, it comprises Singaporeans. They're trusting themselves. If they don't trust themselves, who will they trust? That's our main message, and it's critical to our defense. You can't turn around and say, you defend me, because the only capability is ourselves. And that's the critical role that the NS plays. And I think Singaporeans understand it.
Right.
Thank you very much.
Point to end.